Call to order a special meeting for City of East Grand Forks for October 8th, 2024 is now 5 o'clock. Would the City Administrator please call roll?
Mayor Steve Gander.
Here.
Council President Mark Olsted.
Here.
Council Vice President Tim Riepel.
Here.
Vinsky.
Here.
Dale Helms.
Here.
Brian Larson.
Here.
Karen Peterson.
Does term quorum. Number 1, consider adopting resolution 24-10-77, approving the hiring of Jayden Hagl as a truck driver starting at $21.48 per hour. Is there a motion? Move. Moved by Riepel. Second by Larson. Questions or discussion? Nothing? Roll call, please.
Vetter.
Yes.
Pakshavinsky.
Yes.
Riepel.
Yes.
Helms.
Yes.
Olsted.
Yes.
Larson.
Yes.
Peterson.
Motion is carried. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Move. Moved by Riepel. Second by Larson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Means adjourned. That was quick. All right. Call to order the work sessions for City of East Grand Forks for October 8th, 2024, and is now 5:01. Would City Administrator please call roll?
Mayor Steve Gander.
Here.
Council President Mark Olsted.
Here.
Council Vice President Tim Riepel.
Here.
Council Members Clarence Vetter.
Here.
Ben Pakshavinsky.
Here.
Dale Helms.
Here.
Brian Larson.
Here.
Karen Peterson.
Does term quorum. Number 1, updated assistance and lending policies. Mr. Gorte.
With my soon-to-happen departure, what I wanted to do is make sure that all the policies regarding assistance and lending were all in one place and put together and updated to have the current citations. So I worked with the loan committee of the EDA and with the EDA to put all the documents together. There is only one significant change. All these policies existed, but we've just brought them all together in one place. There is only one significant change in the policies, and that is for primary businesses, the loan committee and the EDA have changed the maximum loan amount from $150,000 to $300,000 because of the impact that the primary businesses have upon the local economy. So that is the only real change that's occurred. The EDA asked for 3 particular amendments in here today. We found that they would be appropriate to make 3 changes. That's the document that I put in front of you. On the first page, and item B2, it says that it should read at least one full-time equivalent job. The state of Minnesota is still determined that they want to have jobs as one of the criterion. It was one of the criteria for assistance, and many of us in the state have tried very hard to convince them that the goal is to make sure there's investment and jobs will come with the investment, but they still deal with job creation. So we put in here. Now, one thing I would point out with regard to these policies, you do have the right to go away from the policies if you think it's appropriate for a particular circumstance, but you have to hold a public hearing before you go away from the policies after you adopt them. Okay? So that takes care of that one. If you turn the next page in Appendix B, we wanted to clarify that the mortgage registration tax is to be paid by the party receiving the loan and not by the city or EDA. Okay? It had read differently from that. And on the third one, if you go to the last paragraph, the first 4 lines, there was an extra item 2 that should have not, I don't know how it got in there, but it shouldn't have been there. What there should be is just item 1, make a minimum $30,000 investment toward physical improvements to its property in the city, or 2, make at least $25,000 investment in equipment and to other assets and create 1 new full-time equivalent job in the city. So those were the changes. The EDA today unanimously approved this on the EDA level, and they asked that you do likewise on this level. And there will be a public hearing set for you for next week.
Any questions for Mr. Gorte? Ben, you have anything?
No, I'm good, thanks.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Number 2, consider approving the change order from Equity Builders for roof project. Ms. Nels.
Good evening, council members, mayor, council president. I am submitting a change order for the roof project. This is for the initial insulation that was under the old roofing. That was part of the contract, and I included the contract in there. Once the roof was removed, we had originally approved the bid for the roof, the flat roof, and then the seamed metal that went around the building, as well as gutter and downspouts. And so once they removed the roofing, the insulation underneath was going to need to be replaced. We didn't know how much or what was going to need to be replaced. So once it was removed, then they went through and replaced all of the wet or moldy insulation that was underneath the roof that was here before we started the project. So what we did is they went per board foot. They charged $5.25 per board foot for the insulation, and they got a cost of $81,732. However, I'm sure you're well aware that we had a lot of water damage this summer from the roofing project, as well as some concrete repair. And so we came to an agreed 80% of the concrete repair due to the fact that some of it was already cracked and patched. And that amount will be removed from the wet insulation. So the net add to contract will be $46,866 that we will pay out to the contractor. And we have already paid for the water damage, which then will be removed from their contract. So we still have some retainage. We're still waiting for them to finish. We have some punch list items, some repairs that they had to do over the council chambers, and a few other items. Hopefully they'll be done this week, because we're hoping to get the concrete replaced next week. And when this is all over, I'm going to take a nice day off. Yeah, because this has not been my favorite project, I'll have to say. It has been a lot of work. So hopefully we've learned a few lessons from this project, and we don't do it on any other roof projects in the future. So.
Anybody have any questions for Nancy? Mr. Larson.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a challenging year for roof replacement projects, wasn't
Yes, it was.
Yes, it
Yes,
was.
it was.
Just to clarify, Nancy, the $10 per board foot of wood blocking and the $5.25 for insulation, those unit prices were included in the original bid?
Yep.
And they're just extended against the actual units?
Yes.
So we're
yes.
not getting change order gouging, as the work comes up?
No. Dan Trenda was up, who was the project manager that we hired, and he went through at the beginning of the project and went through all the insulation, went through their measurements, looked, documented it. He's been documenting the water damage as well. And so we knew this coming in that we were going to have to replace. I think because of the amount of leaks that we had before we started this roof project, we knew that there was going to be a lot of insulation that we need to replace. We just didn't know how much until you actually pull the roof back and see. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I included that page of the contract there. So.
Mr. Riepel.
Nancy, I didn't look to see, did we include in that water damage some incidental labor charges that we might have incurred?
We did.
Okay,
Yep, we did.
good. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Holmes.
Yeah, I kind of have a little bit of a problem with it. Only the fact is that I understand there was some wet insulation from the roof leaking before, okay? But how long did that thing sit there, opened up, and it rained and it rained and it rained? Did we get a lot more damage, I would think, from that point because they didn't have the stuff to fix the roof and it stayed open so long?
We did, I did talk to Dan about that, and a majority of the replaced insulation, they measured that and they took pictures of that before we actually had our first heavy rain. So. So I guess we'll see how this insulation holds up, but they did replace some of the stuff that was damaged after we started, so we should have, new insulation throughout, so.
And then you said that you're still holding a little retainer back till they
Yep.
get everything fixed that they messed
Yes.
up, like the yard and the concrete and
Yep.
leaks and everything else?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then I think the next time something like this comes around, we maybe look a little closer at who we hired to do a job like this. Because there isn't a roofing contractor out there that I know would tear a roof off and not have the equipment to put in the materials to put it back together.
Yes, and the problem.
That just don't make sense to me. I have a hard time with that.
The problem is they met our bid, our contract when we went through bids. They met all the requirements that we needed. We did check references because we were concerned at the price. It didn't seem like it matched the rest of them. Unfortunately, the references that we had said that the work that they had done before was fine. It wasn't like we went into this just hoping that they knew what they were doing. We did actually go back and check references. That's why we had a project manager. We were concerned because the price was so low. I don't think they'll be using us for a reference for any future projects. And I know from what I've heard, they've been losing money on this project. I mean, this just
I would
has
say
not
maybe
been.
the roofing, maybe the jobs they'd done before was nothing like, this is an unusual roof here. This is not like most normal roofs are, so maybe the references you've got, maybe it was just a normal roof that they did and they did fine, but when you start getting into this kind of stuff, it's a whole nother ballgame, I think.
I think the flat roof was not unusual to them. I think the seamed metal, and noticing that behind the seam metal, it wasn't sealed properly, and that's where a majority of our leaks were coming in, was behind the seam metal, that it wasn't properly wrapped. And I think that's where they made the mistake, was they pulled the seam metal off, and they had ordered it, but it didn't come at all in the time frame that they thought it would. And so then every time it rained, it was coming in around the edges of the building, and that was because they hadn't properly covered and sealed that. And that was their mistake. I don't think it was necessarily the flat roof part of it, because we didn't have too many problems with that, other than a couple of areas around the ductwork, where we had conduit that we had to put in and place different outlets that we had to move, before the project, and so those weren't properly sealed. But the flat roof project itself went fairly well. It was just where the seamed metal was where we were having our problems. So they probably shouldn't have pulled that off if they didn't have the product available to put back on right away. And that's where they made their biggest mistake.
Exactly.
Anybody else have anything? I see none.
All right,
ma'am.
thank you.
Number 3, review of cannabis plan. Mr. Huttunen.
Thank you, Council President, council members. Some updates since our last discussion at a work session back in July on this. I've continued to have some meetings with our staff. I would just commend them for the input and work they've done. Increasingly, Nancy and Ron have been really involved with this and provided a lot of support to it. A few things to highlight in addition to what's in the RCA, or what is in the RCA. Zoning and the buffer zones that are allowed within the state's statute. At our meeting in July, we had 750 feet from any school as a buffer zone. We have reduced that to 550 feet from a school. And by doing so, that allows basically the business fronts along both the east and west side of Demers Avenue to be eligible as we look at that eligibility within our downtown commercial district. We did retain the 300 feet from a licensed childcare center, a residential treatment facility, or a public park or playground where kids would spend time. So there are some maps. I provided updated maps in front of you. We neglected in the maps that were included in the council packet. We didn't have Riverside Christian School highlighted, so thank you for catching that. And we got that included to get an idea of what that looks like along our highway commercial on Business 2. Within the business license types, the state of Minnesota will have 16 different license types that they will license for. As we've looked at that and how it applies to our zoning, I think one point to highlight is within the table that I've provided that has kind of the green and red coloring on it. We're looking at zoning for cultivation or manufacturing, wholesaling of cannabis. If anyone of that license type would be interested to be located in our industrial park. But we are recommending that we would allow for indoor cultivation or manufacturing only, no outdoor. We don't have any agricultural zones within our city limits at this time. And for that purpose, we would just, from a security standpoint and ability to be good neighbors with the other business uses in our industrial areas, we would recommend indoor only. That could be inside a greenhouse, but that would apply as indoor, but we wouldn't have any outdoor open field type cultivation going on. Let's see, number of retail locations. I think I'll just run through them all and then I'll open it to any thoughts anyone has. Number of retail locations. Again, the state's minimum allowed is 1 for every 12,500 residents. So at minimum, the city of East Grand Forks would have to allow for 1 retail location. We are looking at it based on the feedback we got from our council meeting back in July, looking at starting out with allowing up to 2 and being specific to say that would allow for 1 in each of our commercial districts. These are for retail locations I'm speaking of right now. For retail cannabis locations, 1 within each of the downtown and the highway commercial districts. The business registration fees are highlighted in the memo I put together, but those are set by state statutes, and we would just kind of mirror that into our ordinance. Retail business hours of operations, those are again set in some restriction by state statute. We would, as a starting point, recommend that we offer or allow hours of operation to be inside the parameters of Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., and Sundays, 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. Low potency hemp edibles. At this time, we have 5 registered retailers within our city limits. We don't have any code regarding low potency hemp at this time. So as we start to put all of these recommendations into ordinance form, I would recommend we include low potency hemp as part of that. That would apply to our zoning, number 1. We would zone it so it's permitted in any of our commercial districts. That's where they are currently located. And those buffer zones that we're talking about for full cannabis retail would not apply to the low potency hemp edibles. I think the only other thing to point on that is there is an option for us to set up a registration for the low potency hemp businesses as well. We don't currently have that, but if that's the desire of the council, we could put registration regulations in place for those businesses too. They are currently required to register with the state, and as the new rules continue to be updated, low potency hemp is going to be transitioning into the Office of Cannabis Management, and that registration at the state level is going to transfer to a license rather than a registration. So there would be an ability for us to register that through if we set like a business registration for that piece. And then lastly, I'm going through these quickly, so please come back to any of them. But lastly, and I didn't touch on this in the RCA, but I think it's worth us having some discussion about, is there is a license type for temporary event organizers. And that's kind of a special license in the event that somebody that holds a retail license from the state could host a temporary cannabis event in the community. By statute, we must include an option to hold events. But we can regulate what those events look like inside the community. We can set things like requiring a special event permit that the city council would have to approve, similar to our process for any other special events we have right now. And we can set prohibit or restrictions on the ability to smoke or vape at the temporary cannabis events. So you could have the event, but there could be no smoking or vaping on the premise of the event. And further, we could prohibit that those events cannot be held on city-owned property or within a public park. We already have an ordinance in place that makes the consumption or use of cannabis prohibited within any public property and public spaces. So I think that would be a natural thing as we're looking at how a temporary event could be held, is to have it be in line with that already in effect ordinance that says it's illegal to use in public spaces. So I would just, with that, I think it was important to highlight that piece that was not included in the RCA. And I would open it to any questions or comments and direction from council.
Is there any direction, let's say someone has an event, is there a state direction of what we could charge them?
That's a good question. I'd want to go back and look closer before I answer that with certainty. I think so. I think there is some requirement of what that looks like, but I need to confirm.
Anybody else have anything? I see no other questions, Mr. Huttunen.
If I could just make
Sure, Mr. Galston. Make sure you turn your mic on.
Thank you, and this is peripheral to this. As long as we're going to be starting to have to register these businesses, I would like to just one more time bring up the fact that I think we should have a registration process for all local businesses. It would help out with EDA, it helps out with notification, it just helps out in line so that we know who's actually operating a business within the city. And I'm not saying that we have to license them all, charge them licensing fees, that sort of thing, but it gives us contact information, it gives us anything and everything that we would need going forward, and we're looking for all the time when we're conducting business. It would also assist chief when we're doing different inspections and those sort of things. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else have anything? I see none, sir. Does he have something else?
No? Good?
All right. All right, entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Helms. Second by Reid. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Means adjourned. See Jeremy.
Yeah. Thanks, Reid.